Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Stores, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I have an expert who I'm very excited to talk about a topic that I haven't really thought about too much recently. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert in.
Oh, hi, Matt. My name's Brook Pridemore. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I would say I am an expert in DIY touring and performing.
Fantastic. I have had some experience with touring myself in the comedy perspective and trying to put things together. And from kind of a band perspective and from like a comedy perspective, the biggest takeaway that I've had is the essential nature of a van whenever you're going to go out on tour. You need to have a reliable vehicle. You need to be able to have what you need in that vehicle so you can get from place to place. A lot of people don't know this, but the current trend of van living or being able to live out of your van and like renovating it actually has its roots in the DIY touring community, where these bands would be like, what, I'm kind of tired of the shag carpeting back in like the 70s or whatever in this van. Maybe we can renovate it and add something else to it so like some of us can rest or have like a little kitchenette or maybe like a little shower if they have like a little bit extra space. And that's developed into people renovating school buses, renovating ambulances. But ultimately, it has its base in these bands that were like, you know what? Yeah, we are a metalcore, a deathcore band. Yeah, we're going to renovate this hearse. We're going to renovate this ambulance to just be a rolling advertisement for our band, but making it a little bit more livable. Ultimately, though, I think that some other things that are very important with touring are getting a good sense of where you want to go and not just going where you think you should go, if that makes sense. So the places that are going to be amenable to whatever you're putting on. There might be places that'll take absolutely anybody, but then when you get there, they're try and go back on what you've negotiated, or the manager will say they didn't know anything about it and it's effectively an open mic night. And it's like, well, no, like we agreed on money. And also, if you have dietary restrictions, getting on the vegan forums, there's a lot of vegan forums of like not necessarily touring vegans, but traveling vegans, where
Yep.
they will say, hey, these are good restaurants you can check out. These are good cities to check out if you are of that persuasion. And ultimately, finding places to stay is a big thing, even if you do have a van, even if you do have accommodations, whether or not it's being able to track and figure out who is like a safe stranger at a show who is willing to put you up, and like being able to recognize like, okay, this person seems reasonable, this person seems safe, and making sure you have a buddy system of other people knowing where you're going to go, sharing your location, that sort of thing. Or ultimately finding the nearest Walmart or other big box store and basically just popping into that parking lot and saying, you know what, I'm going to post up here for a few days and going to become a resident of the Walmart.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one. I think that a lot of people tend to go for. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is how fun it can actually be, because people go on road trips all the time and there's always this sense of, oh, I need to get to this place, I need to get here, I need to get here for the show. But when you do have down days, you can go and see the largest ball of yarn in Minnesota. You
Yeah.
can go and see the car Stonehenge, all of the fun things that, as you can go to Bedrock, Arizona, and go and see all these weird things, and who knows what kind of inspiration you can get out of that. But yeah, it's shocking how fun it can be if you let it be and with a little bit of planning. But ultimately, I think that it's important to have AAA or some sort of roadside assistance. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, and having a pretty basic understanding of mechanics. And yeah, I mean, that's basically what I know about touring. I mean, I try to avoid eating fish in the desert. I think is important. You never know where that's how that was prepared or how long that's been chilling. Based on what you've heard so far, about how much of that would you say is accurate?
Well, that's I wouldn't say anything that is inaccurate. So, I give you a solid B plus, but a lot of
Okay.
the things you said are not the way that I do things. And it's
Okay.
and it's I've been touring now since 2004, and for the first number of years, my old label had a van, and the label was just one guy, and he
Hmm.
he provided his van, and it would be three of us, me, him, and another solo act in his van and driving around. And we went through two vans. We went through two vans in those years. One of them, well, we went through about four vehicles on this one tour, but the tour where that van shit the bed,
Hmm.
you know, we went through several vehicles on that tour. And then between late 2005 and early 2010, we were in another van together. And
Okay.
you do run into maintenance issues, you do get flat tires, you do have things going on. I took some time off from touring. And when I started again in 2015 in good stead, I was traveling via Greyhound. I did a year or two where I was traveling. I was buying Greyhound passes and booking my tours based on where I could get to by Greyhound and Megabus. And you do save money that
Hmm.
in going that route, but it's miserable.
I
And
can
it's just
imagine.
like the big one so I was on this tour in 2015, which was like kind of to say goodbye to my mother,
Hmm.
and and also go to a bachelor party in Chicago. And I left Detroit where my mother was, saying goodbye to her, and I had a bus. I was going to Bloomington, Indiana, and it was like I got to Indianapolis at midnight, and I didn't know Bloomington was an hour away. My friend
Hmm.
could have just come and picked me up. So I sat in the bus station, in the Indianapolis bus station, till 6 a.m. waiting for the bus. And then the 6 a.m. bus didn't come, so I had to wait for the 9 a.m. bus.
Hmm.
It's just any hour of the day or night, in the Indianapolis bus station. And then I did another year after that traveling like that. And before it broke me. And it, you know, I was broken by being on tour on Greyhound buses when I got news of Eric Peterson's death. Eric from
Hmm.
Mischief Brew. His wife called me as I was getting off stage to tell me they'd found him. And
Oh no.
for like 3 days, I was traveling with that knowledge, and I didn't have anybody to talk to who knew who Eric was. I just had to carry that around. And that experience broke me. So what I did starting in 2017, I rent a car and I pack it with my stuff. And I think the last tour, it was a 2023 Lincoln. I got in this Lincoln, I take a cab to the airport, I rent the car, drive home, pack it, and then I drive that car. I don't do anything egregious to the car. I don't hurt the car. I'm not a reckless driver or any of that stuff, but there's a lot of wear and tear. And I worked out for the math for myself. I can get, a rental car and what's called non-owner's insurance, which means I pay a small premium every month. And, so it's called more cost effective because when I'm in New York, I don't drive.
Right.
So I don't have anywhere in New York because I live here.
Hmm.
So when I go on tour, that's the only time I need a car. And so I get in the car just for the occasion. And the age that I am and everything, rentals and insurance is all kind of cheap. When you do rental insurance, it's like $80 a month
Right.
versus like $25 a day from the rental agency.
Right.
And
That's really smart.
it looks like a lot of red tape and it looks like a lot of mental gymnastics, but the truth is, I wrecked that Lincoln on this last tour. I hit a deer 3:30 in the morning, 30 miles east of Pittsburgh.
Mm.
I creamed a deer driving down the
One
highway.
second. So you hit a deer?
I hit a deer. I mean, the deer really, I was driving in a straight line. The deer committed seppuku in front of my car.
Okay.
There was no anything. I was going 55 miles an hour and I hit a 300-pound animal. It was going to happen eventually. And the lucky thing was I only caught part of it. And, it wrecked the left side of the car real bad. But I
Mhm.
was able to get it into Pittsburgh, and then I was able to get it into the airport and exchange it for a new one. And they put a huge charge on my credit card, and then insurance pays for it, because even though it's like PLPD insurance, because it's renter insurance, they just pay for it.
Mhm.
So I didn't wreck my car, and they're going to fix it and they're going to give it to somebody else to rent, or they're going to sell it, It's like, it's all, the whole rental industry thing it's not a scam because they
Okay.
provide a service. It's like, but it's like, it's way more overinflated than I think it needs to be.
Right. Yeah,
It's
there's options that are available that aren't necessarily as well known.
right. Nothing I do is illegal or even unethical or immoral. But it seems like it, you
Hmm.
know. It seems like it because I rent a car for 6 weeks and put 17,000 miles on it, and then give it back. But it's all within the terms of service. So, that's just something I've got. I hope I'm not getting myself in trouble here. But that's how I've found to do it, because it's just me. So it's
Hmm.
like, I've sort of noticed to myself that if I got any more attention, if I get any more attention, I would need and right now I can do it. After I wrecked that Lincoln, they gave me a Prius, and I
Hmm.
got everything from the Lincoln into the Prius, and it was uncomfortable, but I got it. And
Right.
so I learned that, like, I can travel in a Prius.
Right.
So if I gained another couple of notches of notoriety, I would need a bigger vehicle. I would need a sedan or something, or maybe even a minivan. And then, so the good news is right now I can travel in these super compact. And the other good news, and it is, as far as places to stay, yeah, I've been at it for a long time. And for the most part, I know people most
Right.
places.
That is a good aspect of it.
Sometimes it's colorful, like
Yeah.
I slept in the record store I played at in North Dakota in
Hmm.
April. They were like, yeah, so we're going to go home, you can stay here, and I have an air mattress, and they're like, we're going to be back at 9 and we need you out then. And I'm like, okay, so that's my night.
Right.
And sometimes I have those kind of nights, and other times it's a little more flex. But and for the most part, there's a place to stay. I did sleep in the car in on this last tour because I had to do some driving around to get that Prius back to the Pittsburgh airport. So I had to drive from Boston to Pittsburgh. So I drove home, unloaded my car, and then drove the car to Pittsburgh. But at like 6 in the morning, I crossed into the Pennsylvania state line, and I just pulled over and slept in the car for 3 hours because I was a mess. I
Right.
was a mess after 7 or 8 hours of driving at that point. So, sometimes there's things you've got to do to like work around, but it's not, you know, it's not, there's nothing against the law. It's just seems a little like, you know, uncommon, or
Right.
it's creative, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
um
It's creative problem solving.
right. Yeah, that's a good point that you make too about Walmart, is those 24-hour businesses, when you can find them, they have to have security in order for it to be 24-hour business. And because they have private security, that means they can't privatize the lot. So you can be there 24 hours a day. I've never spent more than a few hours in a Walmart parking lot. I have spent a few hours a few places, but I've never done that like make myself a citizen for a couple of days. And it's like I would if it came to it, but it's never come to it.
Absolutely.
The kind of amazing thing is, do you know Neil Hamburger? You know the comic Neil
Yeah.
Hamburger?
Yeah.
He's got that song 7-Elevens are all the same, and then it's like from an old prank call that he made where he these guys just keep getting out and going to different 7-Elevens, and they all look exactly the same. I kind of feel like that about Walmart. It's like I walk in, and a lot of places, one thing I tell people that start touring that they've got to do is really just be ready to be a stranger in a strange land everywhere you go. And
Absolutely.
you're just, I've been in a Paris McDonald's, with my guitar and suitcase, and this guy's just looking at me going, Jan Lennon, Jan Lennon, Jan Lennon. And I'm like, okay, John Lennon's much older than I am, and he's dead,
Right.
but like it's like that everywhere. But you walk into Walmart and nobody gives a fuck.
Right.
Like, nobody cares because we're all shopping at Walmart.
Yeah. We
And
got
like,
something we need to get done.
right. None of us are stoked about it. I have noticed this. This is a change that I have noticed this year is to back it up, a few years ago, to speak to the thing you said about the vegan networks. I'm not vegan, so I'm not in that network. And when I was vegetarian, militantly vegetarian, I just ate Taco Bell every day. I mean, I ate
Right.
Taco Bell every day for weeks on end, and it just became like, let's make, the comfort was eating the same thing from Taco Bell every day. Now, a few years ago, I went on this tour, and I was like, it was right before, a few months before COVID, and I was out for a long time, and I was like, I don't give a shit about the cool cafe in every town where it's the food's always the same,
Hmm.
and it's always way more expensive than it should be. Like, I'm just gonna like pick a meal and find that most days, uh until I get tired of it. And a couple of tours, it's been like, I'm gonna find a country fried steak. Because if you're out somewhere like Iowa City and you just go best country fried steak, Iowa City, you're gonna find a really cool place, and it's like, that's like storied and like 100 years old, and like they're stoked that you're there,
Right.
and you're gonna get way more fed than you intended to for like $10. And so it's like, or barring that, like, I'm all touring musicians ride the Waffle House train.
Right.
It's like anybody from north of the Mason-Dixon is just like, as soon as you get past Maryland, it's just like, get me to the get get thee to a Waffle House. um and so
Fantastic.
it's like, I find these little habits.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota. I got to see Al at the Apollo in 2018.
Oh,
I
that's
was in the
great.
second row of the Apollo for one of Al, and it was Al's tour. I'd never seen him, because I was like, he's gonna do like the Lady Gaga shit and whatever. He's
Hmm.
gonna do like the new stuff, and I really want, like, so he did this tour where it was only deep cuts and only non-parody songs, and so I got a ticket to that, and I was in this, and I was like in tears, because
Oh, it's so good.
before the Ramones, before They Might Be Giants, before the ICP, like before like the Mount Rushmore of Brook Pridemore, like before that, the bedrock of that is Weird Al for me. Like,
That's great.
before I knew I could play music, there was Weird Al. And he did, I was lucky enough to catch him do the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota that
Oh,
night.
that's wonderful.
It
I
was,
love that.
and he, yeah, just, so to speak to that, I've never, it's been a long time. One year I booked a 12-week full US. My album A Brighter Light was brand new, and I was like, I want to play everywhere in the US on this tour. I'm going to do like 12 weeks, and I did, and rang in my 30th birthday in style by doing that. And like,
Hmm.
there were like 2 days where I was like, I think it was, one of them was Salt Lake. So we drove from Flagstaff to Salt Lake, or Vegas to Salt Lake rather. So like, over the course of 2 days, like, we left Flagstaff and we went to the Grand Canyon, and then we went over the Hoover Dam to Vegas, and we'd never seen any of this stuff. And then we went to Salt Lake, and I got to go to the temple, and I got to go to the Salt Lake. It never occurred to me that the Salt Lake, nobody's there. Nobody
Right.
goes there because it's
Right.
terrible.
Right.
Like, you don't want to, we went in, we didn't know. It's awful. Like, you don't want to try to swim in it. It's really painful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to look at, but it's not something you want to subject yourself to. So we had this one, that was the one time I've ever booked, like, let me get all of this stuff in. And I'm just like pretty good at, if I'm driving in the daytime, I'm just like pretty good at like, oh, look, there's the biggest key in, the Midwest. Let's get out. Or the one was the biggest golf tee in the Midwest. And you get out, it's in Indiana somewhere, and you
Hmm.
get out, and it's just like a 12-foot tall golf tee.
Oh, that's great.
That's
I
it.
love that.
And there is, I haven't been to the biggest ball of twine, but I think there really is one.
Oh, yeah, and it's something to aspire to.
Yeah.
Brooke, If people wanted to learn more about touring or more about you, where would you recommend they take a look?
Well, you can hear all of my stuff at the Bandcamp, which is brookpridemore.bandcamp.com, BROOKPRIDEMORE.bandcamp.com. That's me on all the socials. I'm at Brook Pridemore on everything
Okay.
except on Be Real. I'm the guy from Pearl Jam. And I'm an active social media user. TikTok is currently my favorite. BrookPridemore.com has got links to all that stuff. A follow on Spotify would be great. I'm trying to get that up. All that stuff is online, and I wonder about doing a longer form, specifically advise about tour, because people ask me and I get stuck. But I
Mhm.
wonder if I could write a DIY guide to touring.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it sounds like you have a wealth of knowledge, so I think people would be into that for sure.
yeah, I could go and go and go. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk with me.
Yeah, thank you.
My name's Matt Stores, and this has been Mattsplaining.